All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Precision University for 2022. I am Amanda Doritas. I'm the Champaign County Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension Educator and part of the PrecisionU committee. Today, we are going to be talking about adapting to supply chain shortages. So with that, John, I'll turn it over to you to get the program started.
Excellent. Thanks, Amanda, and good morning, everyone. My name is John Fulton. I'm with OhioState as well as an extension specialist, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. And I'll ask Doug and Sarah and Jenna if they don't mind to turn their cameras on too. But this idea this morning is, and I think as people responded in the chat, there's a lot of challenges that we're facing. It's as unique situation in my mind that we've ever been in agriculture, and not only I saw chemical and fertilizers being top of the list, that looks like, but when we get down to getting new technology, updating technology, parts, it's become quite a challenging situation out there. And it's a real pleasure to have three people with us today to have some discussion. They each coming from a little bit different perspective here in terms of the agricultural industry, and I'll let them here in a minute introduce themselves, but we got Sarah Waltner, that's Senior Director of Global Sales with Raven Industries. It's a pleasure to have you, Sarah. Miss Jenna Elleman from AgPro. She's their integrated solutions consultants, and so really supports the technology that John Deere is providing out there to AgPro's customers. And then also it's a pleasure to have Doug Wical with Sunrise Co-op, who's a technology lead, but as many of you may know, that he wears a lot of hats and has been around the business for some time. It's a pleasure to have him kind of representing the kind of retail / co-op sector. So with that, we're going to kind of go around and introduce, but before that, I think our real motivation here is to have some perspective. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of how we got here. I think we all kind of recognize when it kind of started, and that would have been in March, about 2 years ago. But really what to be thinking about and how these companies and others are kind of transitioning to support farmers and those folks on the ground, boots on the ground out there. So with that, Sarah, I'm going to open it up to you and let you introduce yourself, and then we'll move to Jenna and then Doug.
Great, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, whenever you might be watching this recording. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and as was mentioned, my name is Sarah Waltner, and I'm the Senior Director of Global Sales at Raven. As most people know, Raven was recently acquired by CNH and does continue to provide services to a variety of manufacturers and customers, in addition to, of course, CNH. And I've been with Raven just over 19 years, and have held various roles, actually background in engineering, and then held a lot of operational roles, including a lot with supply chain before moving into the sales side of the business. So look forward to the discussion today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jenna Elleman. I'm an integrated solutions consultant here at AgPro. I cover most of Southern Ohio and Kentucky. I've been in this role for just over 2 years now. Graduated from agricultural engineering at Ohio State before that, but excited to get to have a discussion with all of you today.
Go ahead, Doug.
Hello, this is Doug Wical with Sunrise Cooperative. Going to show my age here. I'm getting ready to start my 32nd year with the company, so and have had many roles in it, but since the mid-90s been focused on precision ag and the technology that we use not only in-house but supply to our customers. Have been an agronomy manager in the past, so the supply chain issues, still hear about them and understand everybody's pain and concerns on the input side as well as the equipment side. So.
Well, Doug, since you're on, let's just kind of jump in. Give us a little bit of perspective on what you think kind of some of the background and root causes of how we've kind of arrived here in January of 2022 and the challenges we're facing here.
Well, I think one thing that's led to this, in my opinion, is everybody's so concerned about inventory cost and the cost of money, and a lot of our suppliers have went to, and so have we, just in time type mentality on the inventory. So meaning trying to schedule and ship and have things in stock based upon the season or based upon projected need. And that's kind of all changed because as we started to see these shortages, labor shortages, trucking shortages, whatever we want to use to say this is the reason we can't get a part, start to implode or start to snowball. It just, because we didn't have it in our barn or somebody didn't have it in their warehouse, and it's so on down the chain, it just snowballed into now taking probably what's going to be 3 years to recover through it. So
yeah. Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree, first of all, with what Doug said. And I think, as we think about it, so we primarily provide precision solutions. So a lot of technical type product and a lot of electronics, although we've also had trouble in connectors, wires, a lot of mechanical parts as well. It's not just been limited to electronics, but I absolutely agree from like a fundamental level with what Doug has said. I would also add that there were various parts at play starting in COVID for the parts we supply, between, not just factories being shut down. And I agree with Doug, our supply chain is not meant for people to hoard, months worth of product at a time. That's just not how our global supply chain is set up right now. And so between COVID and all of the factories and everything that got shut down, all of the airfare, I think a lot of people don't realize just how much cargo in normal times gets transmitted through commercial airfare. And when that goes down significantly, that burden then goes to cargo ships. And that has its own set of trouble, right? And then you enter some of the things that people started buying during the pandemic: games, electronics, extra monitors for working at home, all of the different things. Some people had not much money and some people had more money. And so they're buying washing machines, and you just think of all the things that take these kind of components. And then you think about the fiscal and policy around how money was inserted into the economy, and that stimulated in many cases people to invest in more of these types of things. And you add to that the global issues going on at play, primarily between China and many of the rest of the regions of the world, specifically the US, and the protective nature of them wanting to make sure they had enough supply of chips. And so much of what goes into electronics today, at least parts of it, trace back to China. And so then you also look at the US being careful and saying, hey, some of our chips have a lot of know-how in them. And there was some pulling out of Chinese manufacturers to Taiwan and other places where the US felt better about. And you add each of these pieces together, including global economic, or at least US economic recovery, that in many cases and in many places went very much quicker than anyone anticipated. And I think that really, to me, is a combination of factors. And of course, here we are in ag, and commodity prices went where we didn't expect them to go, right? So, you add that on top of everything else, and here we are.
Jenna, do you want to add anything?
I would just absolutely echo what Doug and Sarah said there. I think they pretty much hit the nail on the head. That increased demand and the less available supply just definitely has wreaked some havoc around here lately, especially in this area where everybody had a pretty good year.
Yeah. So let's turn from that kind of gives us a little bit of good background. I mean, a lot of this, again, it's been 2 years in the making here a little bit on some of this, but as you kind of enter to each of your companies, what's kind of been impacted by your products and services, and what have you guys been doing to try and address that, not only internally but maybe also with your customers as well? And so, Jenna, maybe we'll go backwards and start with you on that.
Sure. So I guess, I think at some point, the better question might be is what products haven't been affected at this point. I think we've seen a little bit of an impact on everything. At some point or another, it just seems like there's been a different shortage on everything at a different period in time. But, even the things that we are seeing move or be produced are moving at a slower pace than maybe we would normally expect, just, based on some of those challenges that we just talked about. So some struggles there, but just, as a dealer, it's kind of felt a little bit outside of our control, but it's really just been about having consistent communication, both with Deere and with our customers about, what we're trying to do to address those things. And then, just getting creative about what do you already have on hand that you can use. And then also having a little bit of flexibility to prioritize those orders for customers that may have more immediate needs and those types of things going into the future.
Yeah, thanks. Sarah?
Yeah, so I would say I agree with Jenna. It'd be easier to talk about what's not affected. But I would say where we have seen it the most has been in the semiconductors and in the chips. And that's for people not aware of that, of what really that is. It's the brains behind most of our electronics, whether you're interacting with a display on your pickup or your washing machine or Precision Ag. And so that has been by far where we've seen the worst of it. We went from, first of all, having a good pipeline of material coming from our supply chain. And so really having a pretty short lead time from a turnaround standpoint to it's regularly to get quoted 80-week lead times right now. That's like not this June, but like next June. I mean, that's just crazy, right? But we also are seeing it in I would say not consistently, but sporadically enough to cause really significant issues in plastic. So our housings, in connectors, in the pins that go into the connectors, in the rare wire, I mean, really kind of across the board. And so what our focus has really been as far as what we're doing about it, starting really in earnest beginning of last year, putting a significant portion of our engineering team on figuring out, can we get an alternate that has the exact same capability that we can design in? Do we have to completely redesign the board to more capable, to more readily available components? Actually, as I speak, there's a team that just got convened yesterday that's meeting all day today to say, okay, what other options can we get to our farmers? So they need, it's all about the problem they're trying to solve. And so if this is what they need to do out in the field, and we don't think we can get X, Y, or Z this spring, what other creative ways can we, between engineering and supply chain and operations and sales, come up with alternates that could still at least solve part of the problem?
Excellent. Doug?
Well, I'll echo what Sarah just said there. Basically, it's been the conversations with our growers of, let's look at what you've already got in the shed. We understand you'd like to update. We understand we probably can't get it this year, but let's talk about what you do have and what it's telling you and what you can manually adjust, what you can physically adjust, and then back to parts and repairs, and if something breaks down in the field, it's kind of take a step back, look what we've got, and how do we rewire it to keep you up and going, to make it work. The gist of it is, if I talk about sprayer technology and the huge advancements that we've made and have gotten used to, sometimes some of the people in those, we have to take a step back and say, it's still speed and pressure based. So we can get you taken care of, or at least get you where you need to be, but we're going to have to go old school on some stuff here. No, the chips that Sarah mentioned, and the electronic side of it, when some of our suppliers are much smaller than General Motors or Ford, and or PACCAR with the Kenworth and Peterbilt, and they're all using the exact same chip to do very similar purposes. Well, it's who's going to scream the loudest to get what they need, or the transfer side to that is it's worked out because there's been a lot of startup mom and pop operations that can't supply General Motors or Ford or Kenworth, but they can supply an ag leader or precision planting, not in great quantities, but they can get some stuff. So we're seeing stuff trickle in. It's just how we've planned for it. For us, we tried to look at, last June, early last summer, what have we sold in the past? What do we think we're going to do? So did some forecasting and did large orders to have some inventory to work off of, looked at the last 5-6 years worth of sales and tried to do a better job of forecasting. But there again, when we were doing that, we were at $3 or $4 corn, not $6 corn. So we quickly sold through what we've sold in the last 5 years. And now we're, I can say in my career, I've had to tell more people, no, not this year. Please be patient. We'll get you next season.
And by the way, Doug, I saw someone put in the chat, that was one of the responses, to ask people to be patient right now, all their customers, because there is a little bit of a time element to get things ordered and possibly get them in and available. So patience is a very big key here. We got a question for everyone. We're going to jump over we had a question in the Q&A, and it's a pretty good one. I think it alludes to some of the discussion that was brought out here on this last point, but basically it says, well, because of the manufacturing, significant manufacturing of our products overseas and the challenges we're seeing, the question comes is, will there be any move by the industry to try and put some of that manufacturing back in the US? And so maybe Sarah, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I would say I'll do it in pieces, first of all. So for those not familiar with the semiconductor industry, it starts with a silicon wafer in fabs, and it's probably some of the cleanest manufacturing that happens. And when you set up a semiconductor plant, it is a multi-billion, multi-year effort. And so a lot of people have asked, well, why don't we just add more capacity? And it's very capacity heavy. And those of you who work in capacity heavy industries, you know how bad that is if the demand isn't there. And so it's really a long thing, but I think absolutely we will. And you've even seen, if you've read articles at all, Apple is considering building a plant in the US, several other large companies who have been brought to their knees by this. I think it will be a wake-up call, and has been a wake-up call, to say, oh my goodness, we've got to get more of that in the US. What I think needs to be thought through very carefully is you have to trace your supply chain all the way back, because if you add a piece of manufacturing to the US, but you've got too much of a dependency on something that's required to enable that capacity, you're still going to have issues. And look, we live in a global world. We're not going to go back to where everything is in the US. But I do think that there are many companies, and like in our company, we're looking and in several places, whether it's other mechanical parts, which we already mostly source in the US, or other things like that. I think there absolutely will be a move. But while I wish it was as simple as, hey, quick, put in added capacity, you do have to think about the steps of supply before that to make sure you've actually got the independence that you need.
Good points. Good points. Doug, you got any comments on that?
On the technology side, we're a middleman. We're an end provider, so we're dependent on Raven and some of the others to supply us, for us to sell. So it's more about communication and working with our suppliers or our representatives and making sure that they see what's in demand for us, and trying to figure out how to manage that inventory and make sure that we're not overcommitting to customers, that we're going to have stuff in stock to make sure that they're not down during the spring. So again, back to my, having to tell a client, no, no, let's just hold off, because I don't think that's in your best interest right now, because we want to make sure that machine's able to go when it's time to go, and what can we do otherwise to make sure that you're up and running. So, and then on a little bit on the chemical side, because that seems to keep popping up here in the thing. And I know it's not technology, but it's a huge shift. So as the plant that I'm sitting in currently right now, back to that inventory where, a glyphosate's a glyphosate, if you want to basically, they all have their differences, but 4 years ago, we were trying to streamline it to 1 or 2 products just because of the inventory aspect of it. Now, to ensure that our customers have what they need and what they've prepaid for, we now sit here with 9 different glyphosate suppliers in the building. So, and then the backlog of what that changes, clear down to the office administrator, and now you've got, instead of 1 or 2 item codes, because was it bulk, was it packaged, was it a shuttle, now you've got 9 times 3, and it's tracking all that aspect of it. So it's trial by fire, in my opinion.
Yeah. Jenna, we'll start on the next topic, but just for everyone, it looked like just from our poll question, about 80% of everyone was negatively impacted so far. So we got a pretty significant portion of the audience here today that has had some severe, some impact from all this. But Jenna, kind of, looking for this growing season, 2022, what do farmers and maybe some of your other customers that you sell and support, what should they be focus on to be successful this year, considering everything we've been talking about?
Well, I think, Doug's kind of got a good segue to this, where he's talked about, having to unfortunately tell some people, no, that's never what we want to do. But unfortunately, we really can't make promises about timelines, especially for spring at this point in time. So I think, we've been really just trying to communicate a message of urgency and planning ahead. So if you haven't done something now for spring, you're probably already too late. But the best thing you can do is, if you want to upgrade in the future, maybe get your name on that order list. You're better off to have it on order and see when it comes in, and maybe make the transition at that point, rather than just trying to wait for stock to come in. Get your name on a retail order if you can in that window. And then I would just say, we are asking for patience. We want people to understand the fluidity of the situation. We don't know what's going to happen or how long it's going to last. So, my suggestion to everybody I've worked with has just been kind of, think about not only what do you want to do this year in an ideal situation, but what might you be looking to do in the future? Are there steps that you can start to take towards that now? And then, just in addition to, use what technology you already have to the best of your ability. Are there tools that you're not really using that you can use to make better decisions that may, free up some availability for those things in the future? So just, a couple different things to look at that way.
Yeah, great. Sarah, anything from your perspective on making sure that farmers and those, retailers and others that you guys to be successful in the coming year here?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably like many people, I grew up on a farm, and when my dad wanted to plant it in the afternoon, he would send me or one of my siblings to town in the morning to get a part for it, right? And by the way, we also grew up on a hog farm, so a trip to town meant you weren't in the barn, so that was actually a welcome change. But going in the morning for a part that you need to plant within the afternoon, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I did that, right? That is so far from reality, as Jenna said. And so I think, the earlier you can plan, whether it's with your agronomist, with your dealer, with your accountant, all the things, I think it just plan early and often. And I would say plan more than one scenario. Have a plan. I think Doug said it really well. What's in your shed? What other ways can we solve this problem? And I think, like I said, my background, I spent years in supply chain, and certainly there is a time to be heavy-handed and to, if not physically, literally pounding the table to demand for things. And I think we are not in that kind of a supply chain situation. The people who will be successful are those who can work with their input providers and work with their supply partners and say, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. What are all the ways we can do it? Here's what I have, here's what I need. You know, like to the Doug's point, we have engineers right now looking back versions, multiple versions of how we get to speed and pressure to say, well, can we get those parts? And yeah, it's not the new technology and it doesn't do as much, but it does something, right? And, you know, by the way, if you have an input problem and technology helps you utilize those inputs more effectively, that's also part of the solution to the input shortage problem. And so I think plan early, plan often. I'm not saying you don't keep begging for it, but it really, I think I've seen those who are winning are those who are willing to start early and work creatively and understand that they might not get option A or B, but C or D will still help them somehow.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sarah. I think sometimes, you know, we've been so used to being able to go get that part, but a very specific part that may not be there. So I might have to think about what, you know, I call it my plan B and C. And so I think that's a really good point is in all this is having that B and C, you know, at least in your mind to get through this. Doug, you want to add anything?
You know, I'll step in and talk about the data management. We talk about precision as a whole. I think this is where the data management, your yield data, your soil test, anything and everything that we throw in that realm, this is one of those years that you utilize that. So we started, you know, with our forward thinking customers, man, we really started back in November writing variable rate planning scripts and writing variable rate nitrogen scripts for the 2022 season because they wanted to know, okay, what am I going to need seed wise? What am I going to need nitrogen wise and fertility wise? So we can get into that prepay mode, and you know, instead of waiting till March or the first week of April, and hey, I think I want to do this. You know, the other thing, utilize that data. You know, as we talk about input prices, and you know, again, not to harp on another subject, but the results that we've seen over the last 10 years now, 11 years now on the variable rating soybeans. So if you have that technology in your shed and you have that ability, you know, there's a big reason to utilize that, because if we can save that seeding cost or reinvest it into some of these higher other input prices, you know, we're moving dollars around. Your same net spend's probably going to be the same, but we're using it more wisely. So I think lean on that data again, because, you know, so many times we go to the farm or we go talk to customers and that device is hanging in the corner of the cab. They've just not done anything with it. So, you know, that's, again, utilize what you've got and maybe make decisions off of it. And then when we can invest or when this kind of frees up, then we start doing updates and updating the equipment and things to that nature. So maybe off on a tangent that we didn't need to go on, but I just want to get that plug in there. So.
Well, I mean, it's technology and the data, but I think, Doug, that's been you know, you guys as well as anyone know what's the biggest question at hand. How can I cut back this year, right? That's been a real big question, and fertility comes to as one of the primary discussions of that. And we know nitrogen's required for corn. But my point in all that, my opinion is when you're thinking about P&K and you're talking about cutting back, to me, it's soil test and having a good handle on what the fields are and that you're in good shape before you make a decision to say, you know, hey, I'm not going to apply here or there, whatever that may be. But it's really doing your homework this year's become very important in my book as far as making some of those decisions.
You know, I'm showing my age here a little bit again, John. You know, I remember back early in my career when we were selling corn for $1.50. You know, we had some government programs. Guys still planted the crop, and they still bought inputs. It was just managing it. This is just the other end of the scale of it. You know, you're still got to be a manager and use what's available to you to make the best decisions. And it's the soil test, the yield data, and managing it through there, just to make sure you've got a positive ROI on that.
So we've kind of alluded to this, or each of you have a little bit, but I think this becomes important. And then we got a really good question in the chat box that we'll get to after this. And but how should farmers and end users handle making new purchases, in particular on technology, and even if you want to comment on parts, Jenna, from your guys' end. But we've heard patience, we've heard, being proactive, but anything, other suggestions that folks, and we'll start with you, Jenna.
I would just say, in addition to that, I think maybe, things are starting to move again a little bit. So we may see a little bit of that pressure come off, just because we may have more used stuff available, but the new stuff is still just going to be really hard to get a hold of here. So, just the earlier you can plan, the better, and, try to shift your season mindset rather than, waiting until a couple months before and saying, oh, I'm going to get that ready for the next season. It needs to be when you get done with planting, is your planter ready to roll for the next year? When you get done with harvest, is your combine and all your technology that you need for that ready to go for next year? Try to shift that mindset a little bit earlier. And, I'll just reiterate again, you're better off to be on an order list and then decide that you don't need it later, or you source it elsewhere at a different time, than to try and just wait for stock to come in at this point. So, and that, that same thing goes for parts, just shifting that mindset earlier. But like I said, I think we may start to see some of the pressure lessen up a little bit here over the next couple months, but, again, it's a fluid situation. We just can't predict what's going to happen.
Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, I would echo what Jenna said. Get it on order. I think so much, and I reference, I grew up with it too, right? Like, it should just be available. Yes, it should. It's not, and it's not going to be for a while. And so getting in line and working with your suppliers on that, I think, is really important. We're gonna come out of this, and it's not like nobody is getting anything, right? And so the more visibility, certainly a company like us and many others like us, the more visibility we have to what is out there from a demand standpoint, the better we can plan and figure out which products we need to put more engineering resources on, or supply chain resources. And you're trying everywhere, right? But I think the better that your customers can work with you, the better. And I would just echo that. Get a plan and get something on order. And because it is going to start to free up, and when product becomes available, it's going to come first to those who have gotten it on order.
Doug, you got anything that you'd like to add in?
I echo what both ladies have said ahead of me, that get it on order. That's the other thing. When I said I've told customers no, it's been no for this upcoming season. That's not necessarily no for 2023. That is, you've done without for this many years. Let's go one more year and think about what we want to do next year, so that way we can get it on order and have it ready. And when it comes in, if it comes in before and we can get it done, then we'll do it. If it's not, then we're prepared going into next year. So that this whole mentality of just like Sarah said, being able to go walk in and pick anything you want to off the shelf, I think that is gone for good. I think we've got to be thinking, months in advance, if not years in advance. No different than guys do marketing their grain. Let's not wait till it's in the bin to decide to sell it. You think about marketing it, a year or two in advance. And for us, that affects our whole business, whether it's what we do on the technology side, to our fuel and propane and our grain divisions and our fertilizer divisions. Is we're not only thinking about how we're taking care of customers for this year, but what are we going to do to ensure we're ready for next fall and this time next year that we're rolling. So you can't be in this state and have your blinders on and think about the just now. You've got to be, looking out quite a bit ahead. So, I
Yeah.
think it's forced to all of us to be better at that. The positive thing it's come is we've had way more conversations with customers. So, to me, that it's not being just a supplier, it's being a partner, and how are we going to work through this together, and how do we have those conversations to where, it's just not short-sighted solving a problem. Yes, we need to solve the problem, but how do we work as a partner with you to make sure that we get through this and we're ready for next?
Well, Doug, we'll start with you. This is the crystal ball question, right? I mean, this is what we're all wondering is, and Suzanne put one in the chat box for us, but how long is this going to last, or the comments made it, or is this a new norm that we're going to be living through? So Doug, why don't we just start with you?
I think, what's normal? Define normal. Again, 32 years in the ag retail world, and I've not seen a normal crop year yet. So I think this is probably an adjusted new normal. I think it'll get better. I think it'll ease up, but can't say when, can't say why. I don't think it's like somebody walks in February 1st, flips a switch, and everything's back to, hey, let's roll. I think we're going to learn from this, and we'll get through it. It's just what we do and what we've learned from it to get through there. Some suppliers we've talked to, you talk about a spring, not necessarily just electronics, but a physical spring that cost them 15 cents. And that spring in a little bitty component in a seed meter can shut the whole seed meter down, and they can't get the spring because it's the raw material to form that spring, or the factory's been shut down that built that spring. So a broker calls them and says, hey, I've got a supply on these. And, okay, what's the cost? Well, they're $360. Well, we went from 15 cents to $360, and that was a real life scenario, and the company said, I think we're going to pass. It's been 75 cents, 80 cents, $1.50, we can survive that, but $300 for a 15-cent spring, where people using common sense, not losing their head, is also coming into this too. So,
Jenna, any thoughts on kind of this crystal ball of how long this lasts, and if this is kind of like Dougie, I know he commented, is this some norm here that we're working into, we're going to have to deal with?
I think we could all make $1 million if we knew the answer to that question. But I think, I think we are going to continue to see this pattern for probably at least the next couple of years, based on what I've heard. But, nobody knows. That's the unfortunate part about this situation that we're in. But I would expect this to be the norm for at least the next couple of years. So, who knows what can happen, but.
Well, I know, Jenna, just real quick, I mean, if I'm ordering a new tractor or even combines now, we're getting into some of these periods where orders are open, but we're talking 23 delivery type stuff today, right? So, I mean, again, it's got to get manufactured, but we're starting to talk about 23 and what impacts it's going to have.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's a bit a new norm, and a bit it'll change. So what I mean by that, I think Doug's first comment on this was really wise, which is the fundamentals of how we as just global supply chain in multiple industries have operated, I think took a really hard hit as we saw all of this. And I think as we come out of this, when we come out of this, I don't see people going and industries going right back to the same supply chain management techniques that they were using prior to this. The whole just in time, barely enough, all of that. I think this is going to teach us a lesson for a while. And so I think that will be a fundamental shift. And I think there's also, quite frankly, been benefit from a planning perspective for many companies to say, man, knowing what customers need sooner than just, hey, I need it this afternoon, just helps a lot of companies manage themselves better, which ultimately means better customer service at the end of the day. I do think, I listened to a supply chain webinar kind of like this, but for electronics specifically a couple weeks ago before Christmas. And, they had predicted the peak being the worst of it from a lead time and availability standpoint. They had predicted the peak to be August, and then they changed that to a peak in November, so like 2 months ago, and then they changed the peak again to March. And I would say nobody on the call would agree with the analyst prediction of March, and then it starts to get better. And so I think I agree. It's going to be months. It's going to be, I think, all of this year and for sure into next year. Part of that, like just to use our own company as an example, our inventory is more than double what it was 2 years ago. And that's if you just take out the growth we've had and just say dollar on revenue dollar, we're at twice the inventory. Well, why? Because we manufacture everything we make, and we are taking in all the parts we can get while we wait for that one part we can't get. And we don't want to not have any of the parts we can get when that one part comes in. And so I would bet most people that are manufacturing, in many cases, their inventory is actually higher, unless it's like a chemical input and you just can't get anything, right? And so the supply chain is not meant to work with everybody having twice as much inventory as they had before, but not the one part they had. And I think how we come out of that is going to be really interesting. But I think we're in it for all of 22, and it's probably 23 that hopefully we start seeing some relief.
And I guess I'll reemphasize that, Sarah. The big question I've been asking, because the last month and a half has been, this has been a discussion when I go to conferences and speak, is the hallway talk, is all this. And I just keep telling people, I really think you need to sit down and think about where things are going to be in December of this year. I think you got to have, whether you're in your guys' line of business or a farmer, I do not see these things letting up here in 2022. So what does that bring in 2023? Already knowing the challenges and the pressures that are being put on for a grower to source and grow a crop and be efficient, put yourself 12 months down the road and I think you got to really have a hard, discussion internal to your operation, but be thinking about, to everyone's point, be thinking ahead, be really proactive. But what's 12 months? I guess I feel like it's going to be a little bit more pressure oriented, heavier pressure in 12 months than where we are today myself. So I'll throw that out on the table. So we got a question here as well. So does this mean, with all this discussion, should we be, as farmers, this is from one of our Ohio farmers, hoard and frequent electronics for in-season breakdowns? So should I be building my, hoarding everything because of what could happen over the coming growing season and even into 2023? So, and he put in there, it's cables and all this stuff. So maybe I'll throw that to you, Doug, to start off with.
Yeah, I didn't know whether I should just text him directly or answer it here, but I think it's not bad to what he's asking is planter specific, is maybe we have one extra row of all the components on a single row. That's, it may not be bad to have that on a shelf. Because the last thing you want is a pinched or broken cable to shut a whole planter down. But with that being said, I'll give kudos to the manufacturers that we do work with and that support us. They've done a nice job of saying, hey, we're pulling this stuff off. We cannot order anything for this growing season to do a planter upgrade, and we'll just stick in this planter realm. But by doing that is we are ensuring what we have in stock, we have repair parts in stock to ship you guys, or for you guys to have an inventory to keep our growers going, because it does us no good to ship it out and rebuild a bunch of planters, but now we have no repair parts because things do break down or get misinstalled. I think all the manufacturers that we deal with on that have taken that. So I'm not so concerned of whether there'll be a part to get you repaired and get you up and going, but it will be can I get that this afternoon, or does that mean, is that 4 days out? So, and then it's also made us as dealerships work within other dealerships and, hey, you know, I've got this on the shelf. Do you have this on the shelf? So that whole line of communication, you know, ag industry is huge, but the dealer network is a tight knit network. And yeah, some things it's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours to help you bail out, you know, because at the end of the day, we all want to take care of our customers and ensure that they're up and running, because without our customers, we're not in business. So talked in circles there, but it may not be a bad idea to hold a couple of those parts on the shelf, but also be willing to say, hey, you know, if a neighbor needs it, it's there as well.
Sarah, any comments to that in terms of hoarding stuff?
Yeah, well, I think Mike just commented to the chat, if everybody starts hoarding, won't that make the problem worse? And yes, it will. And we all laugh about the toilet paper incident in the beginning of 2021. But in reality, I think Doug said earlier, everybody also needs to keep their heads, right? So if everybody goes and tries to hoard every last part, first of all, you're going to be paying $360 for a spring. We've had those exact kind of things come up where scent parts are now, you know, and so keep our heads about us. It isn't that there isn't anywhere. And I think be wise, you know, if you know that having a few extra on hand, I mean, I think Doug said it really, really well, but I would just also caution people, you know, it can be easy in times like this to react. I don't want to say emotionally, but to react, to be scared, to be worried, and to maybe make unwise business decisions. And I would just really encourage people, you know, I love working in ag. I think, you know, Doug, you said it really well. It's full of really good people who want to help each other and ultimately want to help the farmer. And so, you know, if we can pull apart from here and apart from here to get you at least going, we're going to, Jenna's going to, and Doug's going to, and a lot of other providers like us, right? And so I think remaining calm through this and thinking wisely about where you should put extra, but not freaking out either, I think is probably the best approach.
Good points. Jenna?
Yeah, I will echo what Sarah and Doug have said there. You know, I think it's the wisest thing you can do is to sit down and just have that conversation with your trusted advisor about, you know, what do they see as those common failure points? It's okay to keep 1 or 2 of those extra common failures on hand, but don't hoard them because it's just going to make that problem that much worse. But, you know, have that conversation with somebody that you trust about what they think you should have on hand.
Yeah. Well, we're at Eastern time here, pushing 9:55, so we're going to have to wrap up for the day. But I want to first thank Doug, Jenna, and Sarah for taking their time. I know they're all busy, especially coming back from the holidays. This week's been always getting back into it. It's just like, you know, the fire. But we appreciate your time. We appreciate you sharing some great insights and information that you all provided everyone here today. We hope you guys have a great 2022. With that, Amanda, I want to turn it back over to you. I think you got some CCAs. And again, I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today on this important topic. I think my takeaways is patience, proactiveness, but I think we got to also be thinking about 2023 as we go through this growing season and be ready, you know, be as prepared as we can be as we look ahead here. So, but anyway, Amanda, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so we will be doing Ag Tech Tuesdays again, focused on sharing e-fields results. So there's a couple of webinars on February 1st and 8th. And we also have some in-person regional meetings. So for those of you in Northwest Ohio, that's February 15th, Western Ohio, February 17th, and Southwest Ohio is February 22nd. And usually the information presented at these varies from region to region. So if you're interested in attending a couple, please feel free to do that as well. go.osu.edu/agtech2s, TUES, that's the way to get information and register. A couple of other upcoming agronomy team programs. you might be interested in. A new program that some of our colleagues have developed is the 2022 Ohio Weed University. So those are taking place on February 2nd and 3rd, and there are locations around the state there. And we also have the soil health webinars, again, one each month. You can see the dates there, and more events, regional agronomy days, things like that at agcrops.osu.edu/events. And lastly, of course, we want to share the 2021 eFields report. It is now available, go.osu.edu/eFields. We also have the printed version available at in-person events, so you can pick up a hard copy or go to the website and check out some of those results. The team is really excited that we've now reached over half of the counties in Ohio and almost 250 trials.
Precision Agri-Services, Inc. Since 1994, Precision Agri-Services, Inc. has provided the best agronomic, environmental, ag technology, planter services, and planter products to farmers and agribusinesses. For more info, visit precisionagriservices.com.